Okay, quick video. I've been like spewing with inspiration. Hi, it's me, Camila Rose, and this is a video for 185 Insane. So this is a video in response to author Jenna Streety's Changing Your Life Means Changing the Way That You Think About Things. I have found, I'm 38, well 37, I'll be 38 in October, go Libras. And I started 185 Insane because what I needed was something to help me with paying attention to what it is that I've been doing. I have been consciously changing my life for the past 2 years. I had a relationship in, I had a job in, my mother died last year. So I had a lot of huge transitions that happened in my life pretty quickly. I, of course, had to respond to all those life changes, whether it was, deciding to not do anything and maybe just let myself, drift away, and just, go through life with blinders on, or just not being, or dissociating, to just figure out what I was going to do as my coping mechanisms. And so because of that, and I distinctly remember, I had gone through that first year, things really switched up. Spring equinox 2023, my goodness, really came for me altogether. Like the whole life changed in a week. But I decided then, I was like, I was so stressed. I was so just overwhelmed. I had completely checked out. I was not in touch with what was going on with my body. I was not in touch with my emotions. I was barely mentally there. I had been kind of walking through a fog for probably the last 2 years prior to that, where I just became very apathetic. I just didn't care. And it was like, whatever just gets me through the day, whatever gets these people to stop asking me questions, whatever gets these people to leave me alone so I can just sit and be quiet and maybe scroll on social media. That was all I really truly cared about. Even in my relationship, I was just like I was in it, but I wasn't in it. And I have a tendency to do that, which that's one of the things I'm working on now. But I would be physically there, but often I was not emotionally or mentally plugged in. And so I decided when those changes happened in 2023 to be more involved, to do the inner work, to really get into what's going on with me. Why am I the way I am? What can I do to maybe start to change some things to go in the direction that I'd like to see myself going in? And then in 2024, I believe it was in February or March, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. She died May 1st, 2024. And so that was a huge change, and it rocked my world. And she'd been sick starting in December, I remember. It was just one of those things where it's like, do you just not feel well? You need to go to the doctor, all that stuff. So it was very unexpected and very quick. And so I was going through this very heavy grieving process while also going through grieving the relationship and grieving my job and grieving my prior life. And so going through that process pushed me into some different directions. And as I headed into 2025, because one of the things I did was I said, well, what are all the things I've always wanted to do that I made excuses for because I had to work full time, right? So I had a job and I had to work full time. So I didn't have time to follow these dreams. I wanted to write a book, but I was so tired after work. Or I had to do, stuff on the weekends for work. I wanted to build my, platforms. I wanted to make a YouTube channel, but it takes so much time to edit, and I just don't have the time for it, and I'm so tired. The same thing. I want to be a yoga instructor. Took the yoga teacher training in 2016, never ever used it. These things interested in, but never did anything with. And so I said in 2023, when the first initial changes said, well, I'm just out here. Let's just do the stuff we've always wanted to do. And it was by that summer, I had lined up a yoga class that I could teach. I had places I was reading tarot at. I was doing the things that I'd always said I wanted to do. I did the artist way. I was getting into, I want to be a writer. I want to have this avenue. And so I was like, write the book. But it was hard for me to get the motivation. And then when my mother died, write the book. Life is too short. You never know when something will happen. Write the book. So I spent that whole summer writing my first draft of my novel, working title The Night Ritual. And I was like, all right, we've got to edit it. But I have to have that drive to edit it. So when my mother died, she died May 1st. And I was, of course, super depressed. May 1st, 2024, I was super depressed, super sad, grieving, deep in grief. And then in June that year, I was corresponding with the yoga studio and things like that, and I knew stuff was going to start picking up, and I was going to have to start putting myself back out there because I took the whole month of May off. And then sometime in June, going and stepping on the scale, I think, or something like that. And I had gained some weight because I was sad and I was just trying to nurture myself, comfort myself with food and not moving around a lot. I spent a lot of time in bed. I was sleeping a lot, staying up a lot, like just trying to find some sense of peace. I was doing a lot of journaling and a lot of writing, habits that I had picked up, but things that I hadn't necessarily changed. And so I was like, all right, we can either decide, you have the excuse to say, who cares? Who cares about how I look or anything like that? I just need to feel okay. Or we can say, hey, no, let's be present. Let's do the work. Let's not use this as our starting point for not making the best choices for ourselves. So I started making some dietary changes. I started trying to be more active just to get out of the house. It was a lot of things kind of tied up to force myself out of the house, to force myself not to stay home all the time. March of 2025, I'm heading towards, and I feel it building up because it started in January, and I'm a witchy person, for the new moon in Aquarius and new moon in Pisces. So in February and in March, I really want to dive in deep. There are things I'd like to uncover. I would like to be closer with my purpose. I'd like to be closer with my spirituality. So I went on some trip. It's all about endings. It's all about new beginnings. It's all about rebirth. It's all about letting go. And so through this last 2 years, I've been thinking about what I needed to let go, what I needed to change, and then like having things taken from me, having things that I just didn't have any power to change, and having to really release that need for control. There were things outside of my locus of control. I could not control these things. I could not do anything to make my mother be well, or to not make her die, or to bring her back from death. That was just something that was completely outside of my control. In that January and that February of 2025, I really wanted to do some deep work. And I knew there were some changes I need to make that I was actively avoiding, because I'm conflict avoidant, a true Libra. Conflict avoidant when I'm fearful of disappointing someone, when I'm fearful of hurting their feelings, when I'm fearful of putting them into a space where I am scared of what it is they'll think about me. But I had to make some changes. In March, I was starting to feel that overwhelm of the 1-year anniversary is coming. I don't know how I'm going to respond to it. And the anxiety around the anticipation of, what could possibly come in the future. I had started falling down the rabbit hole in the people go long distances. That's always kind of been my thing. I'm an endurance heavy person. I can keep going for quite some time. I might not be able to go the fastest. I might not be running, but I can walk for a really long time. I was like, well, I could walk. I'd been walking a little bit, 2-3 miles maybe, forcing myself to get up in the morning and go on walks or go out in the evenings, things like that. And I said, well, I could walk for a long time. I've done that before. And so I said, well, let's start doing some long walks. And I said, no, let's work up to walking a half marathon. I was like, it's only 13.1 miles. That's not really that bad. You could do that. The first time, I think it was March 24th or 27th, 2024, I went on my first long walk. And it was actually supposed to be an 8-mile walk. And I was so tired because I was avoiding being prepared and doing the things I needed to do in order to actually be able to take this long walk and be in a good space for it. So I had stayed up way too late the night before. I was stressed out. I was overthinking and overexpending all this energy and scrolling on socials. And so the next day when I was going to go for this walk, I was exhausted. But I forced myself to do it. And I was like, okay, we're not going to be able to do 8 miles, but we can do 6. And I did my 6 miles. That was the start. Where else could I walk? Where else could I go? It forced me to get out of the house. It forced me to be active. It forced me to utilize my energy in a way that I hadn't been. And then I left my phone in the car one day, accidentally. But I knew how long the trail was because it's the White Rock Lake. And so I was like, well, forget it. I don't need it. There was no music. I'm not a big music listener anyway, but there was no music. There was no social. There was no nothing. It was just me and the trail and walking for 9.5 miles. And I did it, and it was the most peaceful, relaxing thing I'd ever experienced in a really, really long time. I was saying I'm intentionally not going to pull up socials. I'm not going to listen to music. I'm not going to watch videos. I'm just going to walk. I'm going to walk, and I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be present. And whatever comes up, and this is when I really started getting into somatic therapy and practices, because I recognized that my disconnect from my physical form and what was going on with my body, the feelings, the physical sensations I was experiencing in my body were a form of how I was responding to the trauma of things I'd experienced in my life. I never felt like I was taught how to process emotions. So when emotions would come up for me, they just felt very overwhelming. And then I didn't really feel like I had models of people who were processing their emotions. And so I couldn't see what to do with it. I would either avoid them, or they would just overcome me, or I would get to this point where it felt like they were so big that I would just like explode. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew it didn't feel like I would survive feeling that emotion at such an intense level. In doing some inner work, I recognized that I needed to work on my physical container. I needed to work on this idea. My body is solid enough and strong enough to hold whatever experience it is that I'm going through emotionally or mentally. So if I have a really big emotion, it's okay. It's okay, because I can handle it. If I have a really persistent or overwhelming thought, it's okay, because I can handle it. My physical container can handle whatever it is that is possibly coming up for me. So in order to get more in touch with my physical container, I'd actually make that mental connection between the movement that I was doing, the breath work that I was doing, and it fortifying my physical container, fortifying my body so that I could process and handle my emotions. That was part of doing the walking, to say, all right, well then let's process the thoughts that come up, the feelings that come up, the physical sensations that come up. We just have to be present with them, because our physical container is strong enough to handle it. That started a lot of change. Also stopped eating a bunch of like snacks and things like that. It was like, just eat regular food. You need to eat food. You need to sleep. I had to work on my sleep schedule. When Insane 85 popped up for me, I was like, this is great, because it is focused on the things I need to be doing, like writing, because I wrote the first draft of my first novel, but I was really struggling getting through the editing. I've been working on an astrology series, but not like the drama going on TikTok, like astrology, talking about Mars, talking about Venus. That's the one I'm working on now. It's the Venus Intensive. And I wanted to have that done because there's big Venus stuff coming up in 2026. I wanted to have it done. I was struggling with that. I needed some structure. I made all these other changes, but I was needing to make some changes here. And so 185 Insane was perfect for me because as someone who is an aspiring author who has written but hasn't always completed everything, I needed something to get me across that finish line. And then there was the health aspect. So I was like, oh, this is great because I already do all this health stuff. I already walk. I had the itch to start running. It always happens that way. If I get really into my walking or I walk a long time, like I start to want to run. And my yoga, I have to do yoga anyway. I teach yoga. Like there were just things that I just needed something to kind of push me to that next step. And 185 Insane was perfect for that. Let me say, because you all have seen, my 185 Insane goals have been very, I think, tame compared to some others. Like my writing goal is 1K a day. I'm just trying to edit through the stuff. Like I have my deadlines and stuff like that, but I'm not trying to do like 3K or 5K day worth. I know that I'm not going to do that. And I know myself well enough to know that small incremental changes will actually get me where I want to be in the end. And as the only thing that matters is like that I get to my goal that I want to reach at the end. A big jump, a big challenge, something like that is one, not sustainable, and two, it will be overwhelming and I will not finish it. But I can write 1K a day. I can write 1K a day. I can edit. I can go on my walks, I can go on my runs, I can do some weight training, which is what I wanted to add in there anyway. I added in weight training. I can drink more water and like track that, because the tracking was really the habit that I'm needing to make, is the tracking that I'm actually doing the habits that I want to do. Because then I don't have any way to reference and see like, oh, did I do that or did I not? I just have to kind of go off of memory. I was already taking my vitamins, but actually tracking it, you know. And so the author side of it, the health side of it, the personal side, the not getting on socials before or after 9, the best thing I've ever done in my entire life. And so I even further restricted it so that, you know, I don't have access to my socials except for about 2 hours a day unless I'm on my desktop, and, you know, it's not as enticing on the desktop. So it really did, like, it was exactly what I needed. But I think sometimes that we can get into this space where we want something so extreme because we want to feel the change. We want to feel like we're doing something. We want to try to give ourselves a sense of urgency of, oh, this is a deadline. I have to make this deadline. And while that might work for some people, I know it doesn't work for me. One of the things that Jenna Streety talked about so much was hustle culture and noticing how it's easier to do things and follow through with things for others than it is to do so for the self, for ourselves, and how we need this like motivating factor. And what I have experienced, and so I would just speak for myself here, is that is something I've been working on for the last 2 years, is can I be the motivating factor? Can it just be for me?